So my name is Bill Hamilton. My wife is Marilyn Hamilton. We were both doctors and have lived in Bridgnorth now for 45 years. So when we came and moved into the house, one of the first things we did was we got rid of some of the fussy little rose beds, particularly at the back of the house here, and we just changed it into a lawn, and we created a path to go round the lawn so that the children could play there. The gardener here is really my wife, but sadly she's not so well now, so I'm afraid you have to have me speaking. So the first thing that we did after that was my wife went to a design course at Pershaw, and as a project she converted the front garden into a rather sort of formal Victorian garden with 4 mirror beds and a little fountain in the middle. The important time really was in 2000 when we went to Japan. It was just an amazing holiday, and that really kick-started the interest for my wife and I in Japanese gardens. Now, when we came back from Japan, I always liked tea, so I said I'd love to have a tea house. Bill Tingy, who was now living in this country, said, "Please, can I design your tea house?" And we said, "Well, that sounds great." Now, coming from a scientific background, we thought Bill Tingy would come and measure out the space and these sort of things and advise us on things, but no, he came with a blank sheet of paper. And what he said to us was, "What do you want to use this tea house for?" And we said, well, we'd quite like it a space that we could sleep in if we want, and we'd quite like a space that I was very keen on triathlons, and with a friend we used to come and try and meditate in the garden, or somewhere we could just meditate in somewhere that was dry, because sometimes of course you come back from running and it's tipping with rain and so on, and meditating in the rain is not very easy. So we went through various ideas of what we might use the tea house for. And then Bill Tingy then came up with the design of the tea house. Now, this tea house is not like any other tea house in Japan. And I think one of the important things about Japanese gardens in this country is that people shouldn't worry about what they build, because what they build is what they want. Don't try and copy someone else particularly. You can use other ideas, but at the end of the day it has to be your garden. And so he said, well, you want a little place that you can meditate, so why don't we put a little seat at the back and make 2 gardens with it. One a garden at the back, which is a little courtyard garden, and the other, the more formal garden at the front, which is the Kari-sensui garden. And that seat at the back can be used as a step to get up onto the main part of the tea house. And so this was the design that he produced, and you won't find any tea house in Japan that has these 2 levels. And so this was the design that suited us. As I said, the garden wasn't that long when we moved in it, and there was an apple orchard at the bottom, and we managed to acquire this apple orchard, our section of the apple orchard at the bottom, and this was where we placed the tea house. So first of all, we had an archway that leads into this section, and in the typical Japanese style, when you look down the garden, all you see is this archway. You don't actually see the tea house. And as you walk in there, your view is transferred round to the entrance to the tea house. And the entrance to the tea house is low, not as low as many of the tea houses in Japan, but the whole concept is to stop the samurai taking swords in and to sort of humble yourself and go into the tea house. We have had odd tea ceremonies, but we don't use it particularly then. Sometimes when our family are here, because now our 4 children are all married, we have 11 grandchildren, and so we can't quite accommodate them all in the house these days. So often, particularly when the children were a bit younger, sometimes the parents were quite keen to come and sleep in the tea house because they then got peace and quiet. And it's been amazing that in the 23 years since it was built, that there's been virtually no movement in this frame. We had to decide what the walls were going to be, and we tried all different things, and we've ended up with, I forget what was in the center of the walls. There was some sort of material that we ended up as the best stuff. And then it was covered in lime mortar plaster. And this is the same material as is used in many of the National Trust properties. And it has yellow dye incorporated into it. So we've now got our tea house. But at this time, it was a tea house in an orchard. And there was just grass and apple trees. The next step was to actually build the Japanese garden. My wife had a clear idea of what she wanted, and she chatted with Robert Ketchell, and Robert sort of suggested, how we could do things. And amazingly, he just effectively wrote on the back of a fag packet the quantities he wanted of rocks and stones and so on. And we then set off over a period of 6 months or so, gathering these rocks and stones. And I remember in particular going to Wales, where my wife's cousin was, who had a field with a stone wall that had fallen down and was causing trouble with her horses. And she said, well, you can take all these stones. And then we'd gathered together the silver grey gravel, 6mm silver grey gravel, and we'd gathered other things. We'd gathered some granite sets and so on, reclaimed granite pieces. And it was just lovely. And I've always felt that a lot of the peace in Japanese gardens really relates to the stones. And placing of the stones is a great art. There's a little section further down which was initially grass, and we've gradually developed that into a more oriental area with a pebble path and an oak moongate and other pathways there. And then we've done various trips in the late 1990s. We went to the Himalayas and we loved the prayer flags there. So we have had prayer flags. Initially they were outside the house, but now they're down at the bottom of the garden. And we've had to change the flags a few times, but we love having those flags. So the garden is not just a Japanese garden. It's really a whole series of different rooms, with the formal garden at the front, with gardens outside our dining room and kitchen, with a shade border down one side, with a grassy area with borders along the side of that, and then the entrance to the Japanese area, and then the more Chinese and Nepalese area at the bottom. My wife was essentially a perfectionist, and so she would be out in all weathers, and she'd be happily there all day long, just tidying up the garden, getting it right. And she knew everything about all the plants, all their names, and all the things to maintain them. I, in contrast, knew virtually nothing about the plants, but did the sort of heavy lifting, and that was really my role. Sadly, my wife is not so well, and in the last few years she has not been able to maintain the garden. So unfortunately, the garden has had to put up with me, and I'm not really a very good gardener. I'm a bit more the sort of person who like puts a plant pot on the head and shaves around it, sort of thing, the finer points. But fortunately for the last couple of years, Andrew Dighton has kindly said he will come and help us in the garden. Now, Andrew Dighton has been involved with the Japanese Garden Society for quite a long time. He has a lovely garden in Derby, and he's happy to come all the way from there to here, which can take him up to 2 hours. But it's such a pleasure, really, to have the garden. There's no way that we're going to move away from here unless we absolutely have to, because it is our sort of pride and joy, really.